Hello again, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Ball Caps and Bagpipes. It's a Scottish baseball podcast. I'm John McKellar, and I'm riding solo this week. We are very sorry that we didn't have an episode last week, and Jason, regrettably, isn't able to make it tonight. We've both had a lot of childcare commitments, and Jason's got some other stuff going on as well that he's trying to get through. So just me, and what a couple of weeks we've taken to miss one. Two absolutely fantastic weekends of baseball. Very resurgent couple of weeks for one particular team, and that's the Aberdeen Oilers, who started the first 5 weeks of this season. They started 0-5. They're now 2-5 after winning two straight. Glasgow double, as it happens. They beat the Galaxy and they beat the Glasgow Comets this past Sunday. What I'm going to do just now is I'll do a quick recap of both weeks 6 and 7, and then I'll get to tonight's guest, who is quite fittingly an Aberdeen Oilers player. It's a good buddy of mine, Mark Joss. He's a fellow Ranger fan as well, which is always a bonus. So we'll chat playoff hockey, Mark's journey in baseball, and also a wee bit about the resurgence of the Aberdeen Oilers. First off, week 6 was one of the most unforgettable weekends of baseball that I can remember. There were two absolute classics in AAA, including probably one of the finest games that have ever happened in the Scottish Baseball National League. We'll start with the AAA scores. In Aberdeen, the Granite City Oilers picked up their first win of the season, 14-13 over the Glasgow Galaxy. It was won in a walk-off walk by my guest tonight, so he's going to give us a bit of an insight into how he felt at the time, and a bit of a reaction about how that finished. What an absolutely amazing result for the Oilers. They've really struggled early on in the season. Obviously, we had Casey McKenzie on the show, who's managing the Oilers these days, and she was quite candid about the fact that they have a young and inexperienced squad who have some raw talent, but maybe we're missing a piece or two. It looks like they've found at least one of those pieces in an old teammate of mine and a very good friend of mine, Keigo Miyamai, who pitched both of the last two games, both of those, of course, being wins. The other AAA game that week, which was week 6, which was back on the 8th of May, that was the Comets back in Edinburgh for a game against the Cannons, who up to that point were 5-0. The Comets dished out the Cannons' first loss of the season in extra innings, and what Baseball Scotland's Facebook called the game of the year so far. It was 11 innings of play, and the Comets edged out the Cannons. MVP of the game, of course, David Flores, who pitched all 11 innings for the Comets. And, as a guy who plays alongside David, every time I see him, I'm more impressed by him. Unfortunately, I missed the AAA game that day, so I wasn't able to be there in person, which I was kicking myself about the second that I knew that David was going to be pitching, because I always expect something special when he's on the mound. The Cannons had a really great pitching performance as well. It was considered by most to be a pitching clinic and an absolute classic of a game between those two sides. Glad to see the Comets obviously come out on top. I'll be honest, and it's always good to see the Glasgow teams gain a bit of ground in the league as well. So again, just a classic. In the single A division in week 6, the Comets made it a double over Edinburgh sides. It was 11-7 Comets over the Edinburgh Knights that day. Another really entertaining game between the two sides. It was the third in an early season trilogy in Edinburgh between the Comets and Knights. The Knights had won the first two of them. The Comets finally made it third time the charm with an 11-7 victory there. The Breakers defeated the Galaxy 15-5 in the other single A game that week. We'll move on to the recap of week 7. In week 7, the Edinburgh Cannons got back to winning ways in a tight game against the Breakers. They won it 9-8. A massive win for the Cannons. Obviously, the Breakers, they're kind of they're chipping away, and they're still right there with the Cannons. Obviously, the Cannons now with that 6-1 record, the Breakers at that point were only 4-1. So if the Breakers had won that, then that makes it a very interesting result for them, and would change the landscape of that title chase. As it happens, though, the Cannons very much still in the driver's seat. In Glasgow, the Oilers made it 2 in a row after that 5-game losing streak to start the season. They defeated their Comets by a final score of 13-8. I want to give a shout out again to Kago. It was absolutely phenomenal to see him again. Absolutely adore that guy. He pitched really well, considering that he had pitched I think the entirety of the previous week's game, and was quite candid with us with us Comets guys about how much he was feeling the effects of that. So I think it just says a lot about the guy that he was willing to get up there and throw again this past week, and he did so very well. The Comets were putting balls in play, but Kago pitched to contact, and the the balls that we were hitting were pretty much straight at people more often than not. Whereas the Oilers, they were hitting the ball quite a bit, and they were finding gaps, and that was basically, I think, the major difference. A big shout out to Vicente of the Oilers, who actually blasted 2 home runs in the game, so that was quite something. That was amazing to see. I think both of them were on bad pitches as well. I think one of them was up and in, and one of them was quite far inside, if I remember correctly. Just insane power for a game in this league. He was a massive difference maker as well. And in the other game this past Sunday, the Diamond Devils picked up an 11-5 victory over the Galaxy. Now, I think that's a massive win for the Diamond Devils. The Devils, despite being very dominant last year and winning the league championship, they've gotten off to a bit of a tough start this week. So to get that second win up on the board in this early part of the season is crucial for them, as they'll be looking to, at the very least, hit that top 4 and get a playoff spot. So, yeah, a big victory for the Devils. Disappointing loss for the Galaxy, which they've had a couple of in the early season. We were actually supposed to have John Tafel on this week, but obviously with the issues with Jason and I's schedules, that's had to be postponed. So hopefully we'll get him back on within the next couple of weeks, and we can talk to him about what he makes of the early part of this season for the Galaxy. So that's the recap of AAA. I believe it was just the one single A game this past week. Yeah, it was the Breakers and the Edinburgh Knights. The Breakers defeated the Knights in single A competition, so that was 2 straight losses for the Knights after a strong start by themselves. The Breakers are flying in single A, which means that this coming Sunday could be quite an interesting one from a single A standpoint. We quick look at the standings. After 7 weeks of play, the Edinburgh Cannons are still in first place. They are 6-1. Tayport Breakers in second place are 4-2. They do have a game in hand, so if they win that, then they'll continue. They'll keep the pressure on the Cannons, no doubt. The Galaxy and Comets are third and fourth on 3-4 records, matching 3-4 records. The Diamond Devils are the other team with a game in hand. They're 2-4, so pretty much the reverse of the Breakers, and currently still in last place. But obviously, certainly resurgent are the Granite City Oilers at 2-5. So that's the recap of this past couple of weeks. I'm going to bring on my guest just shortly, Mark Joss. A couple of quick wee comments here to get to before we do. Lawrence Cameron has posted a few wee comments here. Should have 2 Oilers, seeing as you're alone. 1 Oiler per win. I mean, Lawrence, if you're around, then give me a shout and I'll invite you in, and you can give us your thoughts on these past 2 seasons. And then a bunch of Japanese type that I don't know Japanese, so I'm guessing it means Mon the Kauru. It was, again, I just want to give a shout out to Kauru. He was a really great teammate of mine on the Comets a couple of years back, and good friend of mine, so it was amazing to see him. So right now, I will bring in Mark Joss, my guest this evening, Granite City Oiler, buddy of mine, and fellow Ranger fan. Here he is. Mark Joss of the Granite City Oilers, thank you very much for joining us on the show, bud. It's just you and me tonight, But first off, we have to get the important stuff out of the way. How about those New York Rangers?
That's amazing. After 2 games, I didn't think it was going to be the way it turned out, but pretty convincing in the end.
Yep, absolutely. Game 7, overtime at the Garden. You always fancy the Rangers, but yeah, what a series that was. Down 3-1, they came back and won it. Lawrence Cameron says he's been working on that background for 25 minutes.
He knows me well.
So, Mark, we're not actually here to talk hockey. We're here to talk about yourself and also the Grant City Oilers. First off, let's talk about you. And as usual, let's go back to the start. Obviously, you're from Scotland. I believe you're from out Peterhead Way. It was where you said you were from.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you ended up initially involved with or initially interested in baseball to start with.
Uh, Video games, like most things. I started playing the MLB, the show, like 10 years ago, and then started watching the Tampa Bay Rays. Picked them because other teams are in New York, the New York Rangers and New York Giants. So, and at the time, I was mostly holidaying in Orlando, so I wanted to get a team in the Florida area, and Tampa Bay was closest to Orlando, so made sense. Um, so that's the main reason. That's how I got into it.
So you became a fan through MLB the Show.
Yeah.
Did you pick up on did you start watching the game pretty sharp after that, or how long between that and sort of the proper fall in love period where you stayed up until 1, 2 in the morning to start watching games?
Yeah, it happened quite quick. Um, yeah, it was just a spur of the moment thing. I think it was on at stupid o'clock at night, um, and bought it MLB TV, and that was it from then on. Sitting up at 4 o'clock in the morning watching Tampa Bay Rays, and at the time it would be about 2012, 2013. I think a good year. They were doing well. They had David Price and um, Will Myers had just come through. He was in a good season. Uh, yeah, no, it was good.
Now, Mark, you play for the Oilers, and you kind of you live up to the name. You do work offshore quite a lot. Does that affect your ability to keep up with things in terms of baseball, or are you able to kind of take it out with you?
Yeah, it does affect it quite a bit because I don't really have a rota. So um, sometimes I'm busy, sometimes I'm not. So if I'm busy, I could be away for weeks at a time. So that has definitely affected the last couple of seasons. I think I've played about in total about 7 games, something like that, over the last 2 years. Whereas my first year I was played about 6, 7, 8 games, something like that. So it does affect it, but it's what I do. I can't control it. So
So let's talk about your time playing. You when did you start? First off, how did you learn first off about Scottish baseball, and how did you end up starting?
well, at the time when I went in my MLB sort of time about 10 years ago, I noticed on Facebook I got a invite into the Aberdeen team, but they were called Aberdeen Seagulls at the time. I think it was. It wasn't Oilers, but it never went anywhere. And then I never heard about anything again. And it wasn't until MLB UK started up a sort of like a get together with fans in the Aberdeen area. They paid for it and put cash behind the bar, and just you could watch the games that were live at the time. A beer tab. So I was there and got to see a couple of the Oiler lads. There was Stephen Evans, Ross Crawford, David Johnson, um, Federico. These boys were there, and got speaking to them, and they said, "Oh, we've got a team in Aberdeen." And they told me that it was like the training was like in the next couple of days, and I said, "Why don't you come?" And I did. That was about 2018. That was. Um, I've been going ever since.
So you joined in about 2018. Obviously, in the 2019 season, you weren't an Oiler. You were part of that inaugural Aberdeen Express team that finished second in the league and all. Made a really strong run at the Caledonia Cup, despite only being in your first year. Talk to me about how you ended up on that new team and some memories from that first season.
I think I was probably the dregs at the bottom. We probably just said, "Oh no, put him there." But no, we had far too many players. We were struggling. At the end of 2018, we were struggling to fit everybody in one team. You were you weren't getting a lot of game time, or I know I certainly wasn't, because we had too many players and too many top guys, and they had to make two teams. So I was drafted to the Express, which I was happy about because we were the better team at the time.
That's very true. You guys had an absolutely fantastic season that year. Um, Talk to me about some of those veteran and experienced and talented players that you mentioned there. Do you have any sort of particular skills or memories of like training that you might have received from some of those more experienced heads, or did they kind of tend to want to focus on playing, which certainly, of course, would be understandable. But I know that Federico definitely has a very good reputation as being someone who can be relied on to ask for like tips and advice and stuff like that. Did you learn a lot from a Federico and certainly a Stephen Evans, whose track record in Scottish baseball has been pretty well documented?
Yes, Stephen was good with me when I started. He took me to the side and showed me I'd never done any of that. So he showed me basic techniques and Federico as well. Federico's he knows all. He's got brilliant techniques. He's good with his fitness as well. So he helps everyone that way. Or he did when he was with the club. Um, with Paul as well. He was the big coach at Express. Um, he helped me as well, especially when I first started. Always really good with me. But he left a couple of years ago, so unfortunately. But we've got David. David has been there from the start. Well, when I was there, and he's still with us. So David's kind of he's the top coach now. So he helps everyone out. It's good. It's good to have David because he's got a good head on his shoulders and knows what he's talking about. So
Yeah, I mean it's very crucial to have a guy like David around, and certainly Pat, who we know is having a fantastic season as both a player and part of the coaching setup under Casey. He had a home run just recently. I'm sure Pat did. Yeah,
Comets, I think, is it the last time they played? I think,
mm,
or Galaxy. Sorry, it was in Glasgow because they spoke about the weekend. But,
yeah, yeah. So like it's obviously quite crucial to have guys like that around. After sort of what could probably be considered kind of an exodus of people from Aberdeen. I think
yeah,
the pandemic really quite badly affected the Aberdeen setup.
but it's an
Last
oil.
year, mm,
Sorry, John. It's an oil city, so the majority of the boys that were over and girls, sorry, were oil based or university based. So when the COVID came, we definitely took a hit. I think I could think of about 7 players for a start, starters, not just members, starters that ended up leaving in the past year. So we're definitely doing a rebuild this year, and Casey, Casey, she's done a superb job keeping the club going, and Pat as well. Pat's the coaching at the away games as well, and coaching at training sessions along with David. And without the 3 of them, I think we'd be in a bad place. But credit to Casey Focus. At the start of the year, I don't think we would have had a team. It wasn't looking like we were going to have a team.
yeah,
Casey rallied the people we did have here, and just said, look, we need to get a team going, and we've got the numbers for a team, but we maybe lack the experience. But I think we've shown over the last 2 weeks that the people who've just started the last couple of years, even or even this year, there's been people just started this year, and they've been dropped into the deep end. But they're doing good for it because they're getting their at bats, they're getting experience every game. Okay, the first 3 weeks, I think the results weren't pretty, but we've made up for it the last couple of weeks, and those youngsters, they're contributing. You know, they're getting the runs, they're getting the hits, they're getting the catches, they're making the saves. You know, and it's a lot of pressure being put on them straight from the off. You know, it's not development league, and development leagues just as hard, but you know, this is 7 innings they're playing, and they're doing really well. Aaron and Deacon and Jackson, especially, they were playing the last couple of weeks, and you honestly didn't think they'd just been a couple of years, 2-3 years. You know, you think they would have been doing it for a lot longer than that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we've mentioned that you've only really been playing a couple of years, and because of obviously the offshore work you do, you don't get to play every week, which I'm sure absolutely kills you during the season. But when you mentioned some of those younger players like Aaron, Jackson, and the others, they are very much. I mean, they're teenage.
Oh yeah,
You know, they're teenage players. They're kids. They're basically kids. Now, while you don't have like a ton of experience, you're closer to my age than you are theirs. How much responsibility do you feel as a kind of older head to be a positive role model on the field and off for the younger players? And do you take any sort of an active interest in their development and try to give them any advice, or do they come to you for advice?
I let Pat and David sort of coach them. There's a couple of times I've had to tell them calm down, sort of thing. You know, they got a bit excited, especially on Sunday. But you know, to be fair, they know what they're doing. I honestly cannot believe how good they are. But you know, there's a couple of times they've come up and asked me things, and you know, I'll tell them what I know. But there's a lot more experience than me on the team. So I normally just point them in their way, you know.
So you're basically, what you're telling me is you're basically the hall monitor of the bench.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Line, I'll just say, calm down.
So you and those young guys, you started this season 0-5. We've covered it quite a bit on the show. A lot of struggles to get some, you know, the numbers for especially road trips, I think, was a big problem. Some of that owing to the age of some of your players, I think, actually. But these last 2 weeks, like we covered in the recap, you've won back-to-back games against the Glasgow sides, and one of them in very dramatic fashion, the other in pretty dramatic fashion, but also just through finding holes in the defence and hitting the ball there. You've played very well and had a marked improvement in these last 2 weeks. What do you attribute that to?
Good. In all honesty, I think we've got a good team spirit. I think you know, especially the last 2 weeks anyway, we've went in with the mentality we just want to have a bit of fun. I think don't get me wrong, when especially the first game, you know, we'd come off a heavy defeat. The Galaxy game, we just come off a heavy defeat. So I think we just went into the game wanting to enjoy ourselves and try our best. And then a couple, 2, 3, 4 innings in, we realised we were in a good position. So everybody just buckled down, and obviously we ground out the win in the end. But yeah, team spirit. the morale of the team's brilliant. There's not a bad egg in it. I can't think of a bad egg. Any of them. Everybody supports everyone, and that's how it should be. It's a team sport at the end of the day. Um, the individuals.
Yep. Speaking of individuals, these past couple of weeks, you have had the special talents of Kaoru Miyashita on the mound. Talk to me about his influence and what he's done to the side since he came along.
He's the most humble man I've ever come across. He will not um, he palms off any credit. After he scored a home run 2 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I was on the base in front of him, and I've seen him, obviously across the base for the home run, and that's a nice job, the home run. And he just looked at me, serious face. He just said, "Oh no, 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 team, your
Yeah.
team got it done." He did. He just doesn't. He's just a good guy. Um, so talented. His pitching is amazing. He, I think personally, I think it was him that turned the game in our favour in the first the Galaxy game.
Mm-hmm.
He got 3 quick outs. I think the top of the seventh. Sorry, he got three quick outs, and I think the heads went after that, and um, we just took advantage of that and at the bottom.
Yeah, it was great to see. It was great to see Kauru. Delighted in seeing him. I had absolutely no idea that he was here until about I think midweek after that first win when he first came along. I don't know if was that his first game for Aberdeen. Yeah, at the Galaxy one.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah,
Galaxy was his first game. I think
yeah. Because
it's definitely the first game I've seen him, but
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure it was his first game because
Yeah.
I think that was the pitcher Casey was keeping tight
Yeah,
lip.
I was about to say just a few weeks ago, Casey alluded to kind of a secret weapon picture that
Yeah,
she was waiting on. Um, if you had given me a million chances, I would never have guessed that it was Kauru. I didn't realise he was back, and I didn't know that he was in Aberdeen. Certainly, the Comets' loss is definitely the Oilers' gain. Like we've both said, brilliant teammate, so humble and such a talent. And it looks to me like he's gotten like a couple of levels better than even he was when he was with us a couple of years ago.
yeah.
So it's yeah, what a thrill to have him back.
We just need to watch we don't burn him out. That's the main thing. His pitching's unbelievable. But we have got other pitchers in the team. We've got Matt. We've got David can pitch as well if needed, and we've obviously got Aaron
Mhm.
who can pitch as well. So if we have to, we'll have to use some of them. But it's amazing that we've managed to get Kerry. Um, yeah, he's some boy. It's good.
Yeah. So yeah, where do you see the season going from now? Obviously, top four this year get into the Caledonia Classic playoffs. When you look at the standings now, you guys are only one game behind the Devils in the loss column. And even with them on wins, you're only a game behind both the Galaxy and the Comets in the win column. So by no means are you out of the race. Do you feel that a playoff run should be you guys' new objective, or are you still feeling a bit more conservative and philosophical about it and trying to ready the ship and keep this going as a rebuild year? Very perhaps cognizant of not maybe getting too excited, or do you just feel like with the additions you've made that this is full speed ahead and you should be pushing for postseason?
I think if we get the full team, we should be okay. But they're still we still need to keep it week by week. Um, it's not just myself that works offshore. There's Vicente as well. We've got people who work. Excuse me. So people who are in the university as well. So they've got people that can't play every week. But the last this week we seem to have a full team on the bench as well. So you know it's definitely looking up for us. If we can keep that up, I can't see why we can't. push for the playoffs. Um, Especially with the performances from the last couple of weeks. And if we keep maintaining that level of performance, we should be fine. But it's the numbers at the end of the day, that's the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be sending text messages to Vicente anytime that we've got a game coming up against you guys. Like, we need you offshore immediately. You're going to be away for a couple of weeks to
Some,
avoid any more games like this past Sunday. Um, yeah, so let's talk a wee bit more about you on the field. You only started a couple of years ago. What positions have you played? What do you consider to be your natural position? And are there any positions that you quite fancy trying out in the future?
I normally just play in the outfield, so right field or centre. But mostly right because that's where I'm put. So, but I have played centre before.
Mhm.
Uh, there was talk about trying to get in the infield, but with me being offshore as well with the training, I would like to be comfortable in my position and not having regular training that affects that. So I'm comfortable at field, so I'm just going to stick there for the time being.
So yeah, I mean, you have an interest on the infield. Is there a particular infield position that you would like to play?
Eh, no, I'll just put where I'm play where I'm put. To be honest. But they were maybe second base or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm
Yeah.
easy as long as I'm playing. I'm happy. But yeah, I enjoy outfield. So, um, but I should maybe be looking to try playing field at some point.
Perhaps
Again,
perhaps an avenue to wait to go down until maybe next year if you guys are able to consolidate and maybe put out a single A team again moving forward. That might be kind of the right
that's
time to try that. Yeah, like you say, like yeah, you've got like a core of players, and if you can get them coming every week for the rest of this year, next season is when you can maybe get a bit more experimental. If you've got especially a full spring training as well to work on things.
yeah.
Um, let's talk about what undoubtedly has to be your greatest achievement so far on the field, and that's two game weeks ago. The walk-off walk that defeated the Galaxy 14-13. Talk to me about your game up to that point, and then talk me through, what's going through your head during that at bat, knowing what was at stake.
Uh, well, the game, um, personally, I was having a decent game. I had 5 at bats, um, and with the 4 hits, and they'd managed 3 runs, and then we got to the last inning, and it was all drawn at 13-13, and uh, the count was sorry, there was 2 outs by the time I come up to bat, um, and then the count was full count. So I just remember hearing David tell me to not swing at anything stupid. So I was just waiting to see what it was, and luckily enough, I could see pretty early that the pitch was off. So it just went past my knee, just outside, and yeah, it was good. I started put my bat down and started walking to first, but I don't think everybody was sort of looking at each other, wouldn't realise that what was happening, And then I got to first, and then everybody just started piling on top of me.
Yeah.
So it was a good experience, and yeah, it's definitely one of the better ways to win a game. A walk off, and yeah, I think my baseball career has probably peaked. I'm probably on the way down now. That's it.
Oh man. Well, well done on that. But I want you to be honest with me. Was there any situation where you were swinging the bat on that pitch?
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Because I know that I've been in situations before where it's been a 3-2 count in big situations like that, and I'm like, I'm not swinging. I can't swing this because if I swing and miss, then I'm going to feel awful. If I take a pitch and it's called strike three, I can at least blame blue. Whereas if I swing and miss at this, that makes me look like a fool.
I remember Paul always told me when it was full count, always go out swinging.
Hmm.
So I probably would have swung, but I knew early on that it was going to be a ball, so I just let it go. Unfortunately, the next week my at bats weren't as fortunate as that. I couldn't read the ball as well as the week before.
You were excellent defensively this past Sunday, though, as were most of the Oilers, to be honest. And a good thing too, because like we've said before, you know, Kago pitched a. I say Kago, I mean Kauru. Kauru pitched an absolute gem, and he very much pitched to contact. When we were hitting the ball, the vast majority of the time it was right at someone. So you guys have to make the plays when that happens, and you did it pretty much more often than not. Like certainly in the crucial situations, that was I think a big difference in the game was the defensive prowess of you guys. I think the lady you guys had at first base was absolutely fantastic as well this past Sunday. The middle infield for the Oilers is absolutely scary. I think those both those guys I think could potentially be Gold Glove contenders come the end of the season in the awards night, based on just what I saw this past Sunday. If they can keep that up week in week out, then there's no reason that they can't contend for those awards. But yeah, like very well done to you guys and to you personally. I'm rooting for you guys to get into the postseason. I look forward to meeting you guys again on the field. And yeah, Mark, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks so very much for joining me on Ball Caps and Bagpipes this week, bud. And I'll catch up with you on Fallout 76 either tonight or tomorrow, I'm sure.
See you in the wasteland.
Yeah, go Rangers.
Yeah, let's go Rangers. One of those
Thank you.
Bye.
So that was Mark Joss, everybody. Thank you so much to Jossie for coming on. This was a very hastily thrown together show this week, given that we had those issues with our, you know, workloads and what have you. So managed to get Joss on, and again, many thanks for the chat. Thanks to everyone who's commented. There's quite a few comments to get through here. So Lawrence Cameron again, he commented, he came back to a walk off at his own hands and then said, "Oh, it was nothing." and Mark was calling Kauru humble. Lawrence again, we call him Postman Pat because he delivers airmail. Pat's a great guy as well. I don't think I had met him or certainly hadn't had a proper conversation with Pat until this past Sunday. Lovely guy. I've been preparing that one for literally the entire year. Shout out to Erin Duncan as well from Lawrence. Jules Gardner, well done for mentioning Casey. She has done an amazing job. Absolutely. I completely agree with that. You know, she's managed to take a team that at one point there was serious doubt about them being able to come back into the league this season, and she's managed to turn that team into one that's full of raw talent and certainly still has a lot of potential this season. If they can keep things going the way they have this last couple of weeks, they could very well make the postseason, which would be great to see. It would be an excellent story. Nico attributes the last couple of weeks' success to passion for the game, which I think, based on the bench of the Oilers this past Sunday, I completely agree with. Again, big shout outs for you, Kauru, says Lawrence. I keep calling him Keigo because I've had two Japanese teammates that had K names. I just need to call him by the nickname I always called him by when he was a Comet, which was Special K, which, given his pitching performances recently, again, very fitting. For Fergie, says Nico, I don't know if that's Sir Alex Ferguson, the legendary Aberdeen manager that he's referring to, but yeah, sure, greatest manager in the history of football, if that is the case. If it's the Black Eyed Peas singer, I genuinely don't know what the what the correlation would be, but okay. Great interview, John says, Gilles Gardner. Thank you, but all the props go to Mark for coming on. Very engaging guy, and it was great to have him on the show. I'm going to wrap up now with a look at the schedule for week 8. I'm just going to bring up the schedule here. In Triple A, for week 8, which is this coming Sunday, the 22nd of May, the Breakers visit the Comets in what is going to be a massive game for the both sides. The Breakers need a win to keep the pressure on the Cannons. The Comets, I think we need a win to really start to. We have to kind of go back to zero and try and start and build some momentum after the loss this past Sunday. We had a massive win over the Cannons the week before. To lose to the Oilers, we now need to win this one at home and start to really make Tollcross Park a fortress for us, so that we can build some momentum and try and push for that kind of top 2 and 3 before we can think about trying to push for first. And certainly we want to make the postseason as well this season, so it's going to be crucial for both sides to win that, so it should be a really good game. And the Diamond Devils are in Aberdeen to face the Oilers this coming Sunday, so that's going to be a great test for the Oilers, and certainly a game that the Oilers will be absolutely chomping at the bit to win, given that the sides are sort of battling out of the sort of bottom part of the standings. If the Oilers beat the Devils, I think I'm right in saying that if the Oilers win that, they would tie them, because the Devils have a game in hand. So, but yeah, if the Devils lose that and then lose their game in hand, then the Oilers will overtake them, and that would be a crucial first step for the Oilers in terms of that run to the postseason. The Devils will be wanting to get back into the sort of form that they were in last year as well, which they've so far struggled to do. In the Single A division, I'm just going to get the Single A schedule up. Bear with me. In Single A this coming weekend, week 8, the 22nd of May, there's only one Single A game, and that's Breakers and Comets. The Breakers are undefeated in Single A, so they'll be desperate to keep that run going. Us Comets have won 2 in a row, and we'll be looking to make it 3 straight to really start to put some pressure on those top 2 and look to, work towards getting to first place, because we want to win the Single A league this year, and we certainly want to keep ourselves in a good position when it comes to the postseason in Single A, and sort of want to be well seeded for that. So very exciting weekend coming up yet again. If it's anything like these past 2 weekends of baseball in Scotland, it'll be a cracker. So very best of luck to everyone who's playing, and let's go Rangers again. That's going to be it from me tonight. Thank you so very much to those of you who've joined, and we'll be back this coming Tuesday, Jason and I, with a full return, and we'll be back at it as normal. So thanks again.